Good morning. Um, so I basically wanted to make a video on computing today. Um, this is just my first take of it, to be honest. So um, bear with me. But yeah, I just wanted to discuss kind of the development of computers and kind of like I guess, alchemical genius of it all. Also, like the problems that might arise with computing in the 21st century. So basically, I haven't really found like the only documents that I could find that I felt were substantial with regards to actually explaining how a computer worked were on Wikipedia, and just like randomly Google. Um, sorry, just not getting my hair how I'd like it. Yeah. So basically, the inside of a computer, the CPU, which is, I mean, I know right now apparently we're having chip shortages as well, which is problematic. I think there's a huge problem with like the waste as well of computers. Like people don't actually understand how valuable these things are. So a CPU is a central processing unit, which is basically, to my understanding, designed almost like a calculator. So, but it's a very complex calculator. So it's not just inputs of like number, multiplications, divisions, etc. But it has inputs of like binary systems, which are like cryptographically translated um, into um, different codes that need to be processed by the computer. Also, the computer is comprised of several rare elements which are mined in countries where it's quite dangerous to mine these rare elements. So once again, the wastage is really bad because we're talking about a machine that basically like can make alchemical processes a reality. Like the screen is made of like, I think it's some form of liquid glass, I'm not sure. Um but yeah, it's a very fascinating thing. I'm also kind of like behind on understanding how electrically it works. I've looked at different like power grids and power stations and whatnot. And it is very confusing. Also, electricity is like really dangerous if it's not understood and like converted properly. So there's that. Anyway, I have a file with like lots of my notes, so I'm going to be discussing it. Bear in mind, it's very difficult to put together all of this information in a way that's like understandable. I've literally just scratched the surface with regards to this. Like, I think you have to be on some form of a technically genius level or whatever to be able to put one of these machines together, let alone understand it like fully, and not just be like putting components together. And also you need like high level of physics to understand like cathodes, iodes, different systems of like wiring, like how many chips there are, like RAMs, buses, different types of like memory settings. Like it gets advanced and it gets also very like philosophically advanced. Sorry, I haven't been too well. I had a ME relapse yesterday, which just sucks ass, but whatever. Okay. So I have made different notes, once again, all disjointed as usual, but I probably don't have the lifetime to be able to process all the information that is out there. So we have different types of economies that have been established via computing. So we have the surveillance economy under the Data Protection Act. Web tracking is a practice by which operators of websites and third parties collect, store, and share information about visitors' activities on the World Wide Web, price changes, etc. The Interface Builder is a software development application for Apple's Mac OS operating system. It is part of Xcode, formerly Project Builder. The Apple developers toolset Interface Builder allows Cocoa and Carbon developers to create interfaces for applications using a graphical user interface. The resulting interface is stored as a .nib file, short for Next Interface Builder, or most recently as an XML-based .xib or xib file. So we have a lot of issues with regards to keyword densities, and basically deceptive practices, cataloging, search engine optimization or SEO, the process of improving the quality of quantity of website trafficking to websites. SEO targets unpaid traffic known as natural organic results rather than direct traffic or paid traffic. Unpaid traffic may originate from different kinds of searches, including image search, video search, academic search, news search, and industry-specific vertical search engines. The Apache HTTP searcher, colloquially called Apache, or Apache, is a free and open cross-source, cross-platform web server software released under the terms of the Apache license, Section 2.0 in 2009. It became the first web server browser to serve more than 100 million websites. As of January 2021, Netcraft estimated that Apache server served 24.63% of the million's busiest websites, while Nginx served 23.21%, and Microsoft is in third place at 6.85%. Apache, there's lots of pronunciations, supports a variety of features, many implemented as compiled modules, which extended the core functionalities. These can range from authentication schemes to supporting server-side programming language such as Perl, Python, TCL, and PHP. Popular authentication modules include Mod Access, Mod Auth, Mod Digest, and Mod Auth Digest, the successor to Mod Digest. A sample of other features include Secure Socket Layer and Transport Layer security support, Mod SSL, a proxy module, Mod Proxy, a URL rewriting module, Mod Rewrite, custom logs files, Mod Log Config, and filtering support. So in digital marketing, it is the component of marketing that utilizes internet and online-based digital technologies, such as desktop computers, mobile phones, and other digital media platforms to promote product and services. Digitization is the process of converting information into a digital, i.e. computer-readable format. The result is the representation of an object, image, sound, document, or signal, usually an analog signal, by generating a series of numbers that describe a discrete set of points or samples, and the result is called digital representation, or more specifically, a digital image for the object and digital form for the signal. In modern practices, the digitized data is a form of binary numbers, which facilitates processing by digital computers and other operations, but strictly speaking, and digitizing simply means the conversion of analog source material into a numerical format. The decimal or any other number system that can be used instead So, for example, a phonogram, which is a grapheme written character, which represents a phoneme, which is a speech sound. The ISO 31661 Alpha 2 codes are two-letter country codes defined in ISO 31661, part of the ISO 3166 standard, and published by the International Organization of Standardization, which is ISO, and to represent countries, dependent territories, and special areas of geographical interest. They are the most widely used of the country codes published by ISO, the others being alpha-free and numeric, and are used most prominently for the internet's country code. 1 second, I'm not comfy. Okay, so for the internet's country code, top-level domains with a few exceptions. They are also used as country identifiers, extending the postal code when appropriate within the International Postal System of paper mail, and has replaced the previous one consisting one-letter codes. They were first included as part of the ISO 3166 standard in its first edition in 1974. Okay, moving on. A schematic or schematic diagram is a representation of the elements of system using abstract graphic symbols rather than the realistic pictures. A schematic usually omits all details that are not relevant to the key information the schematic is intended to convey, and may include oversimplified elements in order to make this essential meaning easy to grasp. Sorry. Okay, so meaning at a particular position and direction, the outgoing light LO is the sum of the emitted light LE, and the reflected light being the sum of the incoming light LE from all directions multiplied. So this is where basically, like, to generate an image, it uses like principles of like the electromagnetic spectrum. So you have different like processes, different radiations that basically go through the computer, which is quite interesting because to an extent, Jesus Christ, it's very similar to, say, for instance, even machines that would be used in medicine. This is why actually I'll show you. I had designed this thing. So it's basically a design I made, which was like how to develop a keyboard, and I thought it was really cute. So I made it's like a molecular keyboard. I don't know if you can see it. There it is. I'll point it out to you. Yeah. So it's basically a keyboard with round keys. And I wanted to put like stickers of the elements on it, because like literally if you have that way it would be easier to process like chemical equations or whatnot within an actual computer, and I think that would be kind of cool. So yeah, let's just go into rendering or image synthesis, which is the process of generating a photorealistic or non-photorealistic image from a 2D. My voice is going. Jesus Christ. From a 2D or 3D model by means of a computer program. The resulting image is referred to as the render. Multiple models can be defined in a scene file containing objects in a strictly defined language or data structure. The scene file contains geometry, viewpoints, texture, lighting, and shading information describing the virtual scene. The data contained in the scene file is then passed to a rendering program to be processed and output to a digital image or a raster graphics image file. The term rendering is analogous to the concept of an artist's impression of a scene. The term rendering is also used to describe the process of calculating effects in a video editing program to produce the final video output. Internet bandwidth in telecommunication networks has been doubling every 18 months, an observation expressed in Edholm's law. This follows the advances in semiconductor technology such as metal oxide silicon MOS scaling, exemplified by the MOSFET transistor, which has shown similar scaling described by Moore's law. In the 1980s, fiber optical technology using laser light as information carriers accelerated transmission speed and bandwidth of telecommunication circuits. This has led to the bandwidths of communication networks achieving terabit per second transmission speed. Internet traffic is the flow of data within the entire internet. Or in certain network links of its constituent networks. The common traffic measurements are total volume in units of multiples of the byte, or as transmission rates in bytes per certain time units. The CPU is hardwired into a CPU circuitry, a set of basic operations it can perform, called an instruction set. Such operations may involve, for example, adding or subtracting two numbers, comparing two numbers, or jumping to a different part of a program. Each instruction is represented by a unique combination of bits, known as the machine language opcode. While processing an instruction, the CPU decodes the opcode via a binary decoder into control signals which orchestrate the behavior of the CPUs. CPU with larger word sizes require more circuitry, and consequently are physically larger, cost more, and consume more power, and therefore generate more heat. As a result, smaller 4 or 8-bit microcontrollers are commonly used in modern applications, even though CPUs with much larger word sizes such as 16, 32, 64, or even 128-bit are available. The central processing unit, also called the central processor, main processor, or just a processor, is the electronic circuitry that executes instructions comprising a computer program. The CPU performs basic arithmetic, logic controlling, and input-output, which is I/O, operations specific by the instruction in the program. The contrast with external components such as main memory and I/O circuitry, and specialized processors such as graphic processing units or GPUs. Okay. I'm just wondering whether I should just make a part 2. Because my voice is killing me. Distant vector algorithms use the Bellman-Ford algorithm. This approach assigns a cost number to each of the links between each node in the network. Nodes send information from point A to B via the path that results in the lowest total cost, i.e. the sum cost of the link between the nodes used. The path vector routing algorithm is similar to the distance vector algorithm in the sense that each border router advertises the destinations it can reach to its neighboring router. However, instead of advertising networks in terms of destination and distances to those destinations, networks are advertised as destination addresses and path descriptions to reach each destination. The path expressed in terms of the domains or confederations traversed so far is carried in a special path attribute that records the sequence of routing domains through which the reachability information has passed. I'm getting distracted. A route is defined as a pairing between a destination and the attributes of the path to that destination, thus the name path vector routing. The routing receives a vector that contains paths to the set of destinations. It is common for modern CPUs to have multiple parallel function units within its execution units, which is referred to as superscalar design. The simplest arrangement is to use a single bus manager unit to manage the memory interface and others to perform calculations. Additionally, modern CPU execution units are usually pipelined. The transmission control protocol is one of the main protocols of the Internet Protocol Suite. It originated in the initial network implementation, in which is complemented the Internet Protocol IP. Therefore, the entire suite is commonly referred to as TCP/IP. TCP provides reliable, ordered, and error-checked delivery of a stream of octets and bytes between applications running on host communication via an IP network. Major internet applications such as World Wide Web, email, remote administration, and file transfer rely on TCP, which is part of the transport layer. Okay, and there's so much more to this, I might just have to... Then we have web APIs, which some people have suggested is kind of like how to go about developing the whole technological sphere. But I'm in two minds about it because once again, like, you go on these things and I leave not understanding and having to do my own research. Okay, so a web API is an application programming interface for either a web server or a web browser. It is a web development concept, usually limited to a web application client side, including any web framework being used, and thus usually does not include web server or browser implementation details, such as SAIPs or APIs, unless publicly accessed by a remote web application. So yeah, once again, extremely philosophical. Like, we are talking in terms of like concepts. You know, to have built something which is like this difficult to understand is, you know, quite something. Anyway, I really can't. I have pages and pages on this, so I can't do this with my voice hurting this much. But yeah, I'll probably make a part 2 to this if I can.